The sacrifice of Isaac. What if you were asked to give up the one thing you love most, something you've waited your entire life for, only to have it taken away when you finally received it? Now imagine that this sacrifice is not just an emotional burden, but a command from the very God who promised you this gift in the first place. Could you do it? Abraham, a man known for his unshakable faith, faced this very dilemma when God asked him to sacrifice his only son. But what if I told you there's a hidden message in this story that goes beyond faith and obedience, something that speaks directly to the difficult choices we make in our lives today? Stick with me, because the answer may challenge the way you view your toughest decisions. Abraham had already been through a remarkable journey with God. He had left his homeland without knowing his destination, trusted God's promise of becoming the father of a great nation, and witnessed the miraculous birth of his son Isaac. Isaac wasn't just any child. He was the child God had promised, the one through whom Abraham's descendants would come, the key to fulfilling God's covenant. But then something unimaginable happened. God gave Abraham an instruction that must have felt like a cruel contradiction. He told Abraham to take Isaac, his only son, the son of promise, and offer him as a sacrifice on Mount Moriah. Can you imagine the devastation in Abraham's heart? The very gift he had waited for his entire life was now being asked back by the giver. Even so, Abraham didn't hesitate. He trusted God, even when the command made no sense. Early the next morning, he set off on a 3-day journey with Isaac and 2 servants, heading toward the mountain where the unthinkable would take place. As they neared the mountain, Isaac, unaware of what was about to happen, asked his father, "The fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham's response was simple, yet profound. God himself will provide the lamb. The walk up Mount Moriah must have been heavy with silence and emotion. Abraham built an altar, arranged the wood, and then, in one of the most heart-wrenching moments recorded in Scripture, he bound Isaac and laid him on the altar. Imagine the agony in Abraham's heart as he raised the knife, ready to sacrifice the son he loved so dearly. This was the ultimate test of faith, trusting God even when his command seemed to destroy everything Abraham held dear. But just as Abraham was about to bring the knife down, an angel of the Lord called out from heaven, "Abraham, my Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." At that moment, Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in a thicket. God had provided a substitute for Isaac, sparing his life. Abraham sacrificed the ram instead, and the place was named Jehovah-Jireh, meaning the Lord will provide. This event wasn't just a test of obedience, it was a profound foreshadowing of what was to come centuries later. God's command to Abraham pointed forward to another father who would give up his only son. But this time, there would be no substitute. God himself would provide the ultimate sacrifice in the form of his Son, Jesus Christ, for the salvation of the world. Just as Isaac carried the wood up the hill, Jesus would carry the cross up the hill of Calvary. And just as Abraham was willing to give up his son, God did not hold back his son for the sake of humanity. Through this story, we see the depth of Abraham's faith. But even more, we see the foreshadowing of God's incredible plan for redemption through Jesus. Now, what does this ancient story mean for us today? It's easy to read the sacrifice of Isaac as a one-time, monumental test of faith, but there's a deeper message that touches our everyday lives. Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac wasn't just about obedience, it was about trust. Trust in God's character and his promises, even when everything seemed to point in the opposite direction. And isn't that what we face in our lives too? We all have those moments when we're asked to give up something precious, whether it's a dream, a relationship, or control over a situation. Sometimes what God asks of us doesn't make sense. We might feel like we're being asked to give up what matters most. But the lesson here is that God's plan is always bigger than what we can see in the moment. Abraham didn't know how God would fulfill his promise if Isaac was sacrificed, but he trusted that God would provide, even if it meant believing in the impossible. And just like Abraham, we are often called to trust God when the path ahead seems unclear, when we can't see how things will work out. Here's the real takeaway: God always provides. It may not be in the way we expect, and it may not happen on our timeline, but His provision is always there. The sacrifice of Isaac teaches us that when we're willing to trust God, even with the things we hold most dear, He makes a way, often in ways we could never have imagined. His promises never fail, no matter how impossible they may seem. So, the next time you're faced with a situation where you feel like you're losing something important, remember Abraham's story. Trust that God sees the bigger picture and that He will provide for you in the perfect way at the perfect time.